actually stood firm and kept chirping as the crocodile moved closer. The two faced off for over 30 seconds.
With the intent of influencing that judge as to a pending case?
The answer to that is yes, but I also want to at least respond to your characterization of the department, which I vigorously disagree with. I believe the men and women of the department pursue their work every single day in a nonpartisan and appropriate
General
way.
Garland, there are thousands of men and women who do that. And I'll tell you, I hear from prosecutors at the Department of Justice. I hear from agents at the FBI who are angry that it is treated as the enforcement arm for the DNC instead of upholding the law in a fair and even-handed manner. So you are right. There are thousands of men and women that are doing the job, but it is the political leadership that you're responsible for. So you just said, yes, it's a crime to protest at the home of a judge. Same goes for jurors, by the way, with the intent of influencing a case. But in the wake of the leak of the Dobbs decision, when rioters descended on the homes of 6 Supreme Court justices, night after night after night, you did nothing. The department did nothing. When extremist groups like Ruth Sent Us and Jane's Revenge openly organized campaigns of harassment at the homes of justices, you sat on your hands. When these same groups posted online information about where the justices worship, or their home addresses, or where their kids went to school, you again sat on your hands and did nothing. Your failure to act to protect the safety of the justices and their families was an obvious product of political bias. You agree with Roe versus Wade. You disagree with the Dobbs decision. And the Department of Justice under this president was perfectly happy to refuse to enforce the law and allow threats of violence. And as you know, those threats finally materialized with Nicholas Roski, a 26-year-old man from California who traveled across the country, was arrested outside the home of Justice Kavanaugh, armed with a handgun, a knife, and burglary tools. And he said he came there to kill Justice Kavanaugh because he was enraged by the leaked opinion. Now, of course, you're prosecuting that individual for attempted murder. But did you bring even a single case to enforce this law, or did the Department of Justice decide this law doesn't apply if it's harassing justices for an opinion we don't like?
When the Dobbs draft was leaked, I did something no attorney general in the history of the department had ever done before. For the first time in history, I ordered United States Marshals 24/7 to defend every residents of every justice.
So Garland, as a judge, you're familiar with asking counsel to answer a question. Has the Department of Justice enforced this statute? Have you brought a single case against any of these protesters threatening the justices under 18 U.S.C. Section 1507? Have you brought even one?
Senator, you asked me whether I sat on my hands, and quite the opposite. I sent 70 United States Marshals.
Let me try again. Has the Department of Justice brought even a single case under this statute? It's a yes/no question. It's not you give a speech on the other things you did.
The job of the United States Marshals is to defend the lives
of the answer is no.
It's to defend.
Answer when and where COVID began, but the data is still important to their research. The head of the FBI still says that he believes the virus started as a result of a lab leak in China.
New tonight, tick-borne illnesses are on the rise, and that is doctors concerned ahead of spring and summer. The CDC says babesiosis cases are up in 10 states. The disease is frequently carried through ticks and can cause joint pain and fever. It can even be fatal in some cases, especially among the immunocompromised. The CDC says wear long pants, avoid long grasses, and use tick repellents if you go outside.
Another drug maker is cutting the price of its insulin, Sanofi. They are cutting the price of insulin by 78%. Lantus, which is the most widely used insulin in the U.S., will now be capped at $35 out of pocket for patients. It appears the French drug company is responding to similar moves by other drug companies in recent weeks.
Introduced will have some safety issue. It always does. The FDA always asks manufacturers and sponsors, doctors using the products, to participate in risk evaluation and management. That is, to do everything we can to be sure the product is safe. Maybe it's the wrong dose, or maybe there's certain patients with medical conditions that just can't tolerate the vaccines. There was no guidance given to doctors when someone has a reaction on the first shot. Should they get the second shot, or should they not? What about boosters? And then to carry this fully forward to the bivalent boosters, human studies were skipped altogether. This has never been done in the history of our country, to skip human studies altogether and just plunge into a program of administering the vaccine that was only tested in animals. Americans have been told the vaccines are safe and effective. You turn on TV, it says the vaccines are safe and effective. We're so concerned about peanut allergies in our country. There's not a single bag of peanuts on any plane flying over the skies right now. We would never force peanut butter into the mouths of every single kid in the United States. Never. We always have concerns over safety. We always have concerns over allergies. It's been reported today in VAERS that there have been thousands of life-threatening reactions, many of them allergic reactions, and yet to this day, the military employers are mandating the vaccines irrespective of allergic reactions, which are clear contraindications. Every drug and every vaccine has contraindications that's determined by the doctor and the patient together in that relationship. This program should have had a data safety monitoring board and a critical event committee looking at every single death and hospitalization coming in quickly, making phone calls, figuring out what happened, ascertaining its relationship to the vaccine, assessed by the individuals there, that's called the site investigators, as well as by an adjudication committee, and then having periodic meetings. And it's my testimony today that this vaccine program would have been stopped February 1st of 2021 because of excess mortality.
So very fast. Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
Getting vaccinated and getting a booster shot when eligible can save your life and protect you and your family and friends from getting seriously ill and spreading infection.
What do you think the probability is? 80%?
Personally, I think it's 100%. I think that there's a reduction in transmission.
Essentially, vaccines block you from getting and giving the virus.
If enough people get vaccinated, it actually halts transmission. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
We have all the vaccines we need. We just need our people to take it. A, for their own protection, for the protection of their family, but also to break the chain of transmission. You want to be a dead end to the virus. So when the virus gets to you, you stop it. You don't allow it to use you as the stepping stone to the next person.
What a liar.
The vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person.
When those statements were being made, as a journalist, I looked at the emergency use authorization for the vaccine and wanted to see had they achieved the stopping transmission, which is our definition of a vaccine. For most lay people, which is all I am, I'm not a medical expert, but we're supposed to be able to stop the infection, therefore we can create herd immunity. But when we look at the emergency use authorization, which is right on the screen, you can look what it says under transmission, is that the data are not there, limited to assess the effects of the vaccine against transmission of SARS-CoV-2. They had no idea. They had no idea if it would stop the infection, yet they were making those statements on the news. And then just a few weeks ago at the EU, they were having hearings that are very important right now. They asked Borla, the head of Pfizer, to come in. He sent someone just underneath him. This is what she had to say when asked about testing of transmission in the trials for the vaccine. I think you'll find this interesting.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market. And from that point of view, we had to do everything at risk.
Now the EU is looking at suing to get their money back because of the fraud over this product. We were told that this would stop transmission, and now we find out from the heads of Pfizer that they were never even testing inside the trials whether or not it would stop transmission.
Senator Dr. Roger Marshall, who's come here, and he, understanding how short we are in time, would like to take a couple minutes and address the audience here.
It seems like since the first time I heard COVID, everything I was taught in medical school was thrown out the window. That we would no longer talk about the risks and benefits of the treatment. I can't think of any treatment that ever came through my office that there weren't some risks to it. And certainly we would talk about the benefits as well. And there's never been a time in our careers otherwise where if we disagree with a certain mantra that we couldn't have that debate. And certainly in this case, a significant amount, definitely a minority, but yet a significant number of people in this area feel have concerns about the benefits and the risk profile of vaccines. In retrospect, I wonder, what did they know? They, meaning the CDC, IAID, what did they know? When did they know it? And how did they use that to inform the American public? And a lot of the information you all are talking about today was pretty intuitive. Based upon our past experiences, based upon the science we knew, I think we could have predicted that there'd be some downsides to this vaccine. And early on, the American public was misled. And that's where the injustice is to me.
Sacramento Bee is a newspaper in the local area. And then the day after, rescinded their comments and issued an apology because clearly they were making stuff up.
And Charlie Kirk has warned that he thought the original column could have played a prominent role in any violence at his event. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and this kind of goes back and echoing the whole idea of the stuff that is being put out through the media and even in this case through the university is not helping the situation. If you actually go to one of these Turning Point events, I feel like more people should know this. Not only are you allowed to come inside, this is not a closed event, as long as you register and act orderly, you're allowed to come in regardless of what you think. And if you want to state an opinion that you disagree with Charlie or whoever's up on stage at these events, we will give you a microphone. You're allowed to have a microphone to talk, and if you disagree fervently, you're allowed to come to the front of the line. So all of this, to me, seems like a very open and inclusive event. But when media outlets like the Sacramento Bee, who again has issued an apology, and the university says a bunch of slanderous stuff, it's going to embolden people to think that these events are something that they are not.
And the protesters did try to stop attendees from entering the venue, but about 500 people still managed to get in. Based on what you've seen, how have attendees responded to the intimidation?
You know, I think that there was a time, there was a time where, events, this wasn't a thing. There didn't need to be this massive amount of security. And then there was a period of time where, yes, attendees were deterred. Fortunately, we plan for all of this sort of stuff, and the hope is, and what I'm seeing on this tour, is that people are unfazed at this point. But I think people recognize that the truth is super important, and they need to stand up for it. Event attendees are saying enough is enough. We're going to go, and we're going to listen to what we want to hear, and so on and so forth.
And finally, Joe Bob, do you have any final thoughts to share with our viewers?
Yeah, I mentioned the fact that anybody can come in, whether you really agree with Charlie, Candace, or myself, or you really, really don't agree. You're allowed to come in. The one thing that I want to do, and Charlie agreed, is sit down and have a conversation with any one of them that are standing outside smashing windows and vandalizing their own university. We just want to have a conversation. And unfortunately, it seems to be the people on the other side of the vandalism side over there That's the last thing that they want. So we believe in open dialogue. We promote open dialogue, especially inside the events. And, I think that should be a trend that the entire country takes, hopefully going forward. But, of course, we'll see if that takes hold.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Joe Bob, TPUSA contributor. Really appreciate your time.
We need more mothers like you in the world. How old are you? You're 9? Oh my God, hello. Look at that. Mickey Pepper's mom is out here. Hello, you're reaching for my teeth. Are you hungry?
This footage from a Texas performance of the show in question, part of a national tour across 18 states, captured by independent journalist Taylor Hanson, shown here on Tucker Carlson Tonight. But Florida didn't want kids seeing the show, and they told Hyatt Regency Miami so in December. Governor Ron DeSantis' office says his Department of Business and Professional Regulation had warned the hotel, but they did it anyway. The department filed a complaint Tuesday saying the show was initially advertised as a family-friendly, all-ages-welcome event. The day of the event, the agency says it reached out to the hotel, informing them that they could jeopardize their alcohol license if they exposed children to sexually explicit drag show performances, lewd activity, and disorderly conduct. The warning reportedly prompted Hyatt to update the advertising to include a disclaimer that the show was recommended for audience 18+, but still allowed children to attend when accompanied by an adult. DeSantis commenting last July that having kids at drag shows is wrong and not consistent with state law and policy, and a disturbing trend in our society to try to sexualize these young people. We reached out to Hyatt Regency but haven't heard back yet. They issued a statement saying the booking was managed by a third party and they're reviewing what happened. The governor's move comes amid a push for provisions to protect children from exposure to sexually explicit drag shows across the nation. Meanwhile, in New York, the state's Attorney General Letitia James's office is set to host a drag story hour for children this weekend, writing on Instagram that she's proud to host it. The post invites families with kids to join Attorney General James, drag storytellers, and city and state elected leaders. Drag queen story hours for kids have also been spreading nationwide at public education venues. The first one in New York City was in 2017. But these events have also drawn backlash, with protests and counter-protests, even in New York City. And
tens of thousands of drivers. You'll hear from that man and the details just ahead. And we've been saying all week that there was hit in February by a driver who he may not have seen him.
Yeah, fortunately, he is recovering. Fox 5 Sports Days explains the safety improvements the city is now looking into.
He was hit trying to cross Peachtree Street back in February.
The councilwoman is talking about James Curtis, who's doing a lot better today than in mid-February when a driver struck him. He's in a new wheelchair now because the old one was left mangled from that accident. At City Hall, in a departure from the norm, Ms. Norwood asked the chair of the Transportation Committee if she could play a message from Curtis.
I was returning from Shepherd Center on the northwest side to Hardis on the northeast side, and I was struck by a car in the hospital zone. The driver was not paying a bit of attention.
He was on Peachtree, the area that includes the Shepherd Center, where Curtis has volunteered before and now after his accident.
Shepherd Center is a world-class catastrophic hospital, and there are lots of people with mobility issues. I understand Peachtree Road is the state road.
What happened to Curtis may lead to changes. The speed limit in that area is 35 miles per hour. The Dickens administration has formally asked the state to change several Peachtree blocks into a so-called slow speed zone. They want the state to consider reducing the speed to 20 to 25 miles per hour. I'm Morris Diggs, Fox 5 News.
Of crisis, and the 345's goal is to serve as a transitional center. The founder and owner says when they got the building, they knew there was a need for it in the community.
We
got a lot of men who have experienced homelessness, or they are coming out of addiction or incarceration, or veterans suffering PTSD, and there just weren't enough spaces for them to have recuperative care and wraparound services. So that vision started to unfold here.
A resident services supervisor will manage each floor. They will also serve as an advisor to the men living in the building.
Well, the rain is moving out. The cold is moving in. Will we see any warm up for the weekend? The answer